it's the disco whore here. It's time to review the meme book of the month. So the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist got announced. I do not like the Women's Prize for Fiction. I think it's a sexist award, and I don't give a fuck about it. So yeah, it's very unlikely you'll see me review any of the Women's Prize books for this year. It's just not, I just don't vibe with it. And also the books that they choose are not things I'm particularly interested in. But why is this book that I'm about to talk about in this video so different from my already established opinions? Well, this book pod was made aware to me by everyone else's reactions on YouTube to the shortlist being announced, and they were like, Demon Copperhead, very cool, Maggie O'Farrell, yes, very good. And then this book pops up, and everybody's reaction is like, gah? Like, what the fuck is that? Was their reaction. And I went, okay, very interesting. And it was like a consistent, there was nobody who was like, yes! Pod's on! It was all just like, why the fuck is that there? Are we serious? And the second I saw that, I went, I'm interested, I'm very interested. And then I read more into it, and I saw it was from the perspective of a dolphin. And I went, okay, it gets better. And then I heard that it was being passed around and being called the Dolphin Rape Book. And I went, I'm in.
I say right foot creep, walking with it.
If it's a nominee for an award that I hate, if it's a stupid concept, and it also has the potential to be offensive, that's the absolute holy trinity for me. So I speed ran to my Kindle, and I got Pod. It was like $16, it was way too much, and I read it. So what do I think? What does the Disco King think of the Dolphin Rape Book? Yeah, it's pretty bad. I will say I haven't read or seen any other perspectives for this book, so if I repeat some stuff that other people have said, it's not deliberate. And I'm sure I will, because this is a colossal fucking ball ache of a book. So here we go. My document is, it's over 4,000 words long, so this is gonna be a long review, but I have a lot to say about this fucking piece of shit. So here we go. The book Pod is told from the perspective of a dolphin called Ia. E-A, Ia. Ia! Ia! Because you can do it like a sound. You can go, Ia! And Ia is a dolphin, and it's told from her perspective as she tries to become an independent woman. Sorry, dolphin. She tries to become an independent dolphin, and while she does, there's all these evil men, sorry, dolphins, who are trying to oppress her. And there's a patriarchy, sorry, dolphin pod, that are trying to push her down and keep her in line with the rest of her harem. And there's also other fish in the sea. There's a whale, there's a wrasse, there's a big fucking puffer fish. It's so dumb! Okay, I can't fucking deal with it. It's so dumb, alright? Can this is gonna be a hard review. This is not gonna be a coherent review, alright? I fucking hated this book. I could not stand it. It sucked. It all sucked. It was shit, right? There is one issue that absolutely and completely kills this book. It's the fatal flaw of the fucking book, and that is, it's unbelievable. Impressive self-seriousness. It is the most self-important, pretentious book I think I might have ever read. It is so, like, enamored with its own pretense, and it thinks it's so fucking smart, and I could not deal with it. It was so bad. This will be, what I'm about to say will be the thesis of this video. That will be my uniting premise, which is, if you replaced the dolphins in this book with mermaids, and there's a hunky merman who's an alpha, and there's a sort of quirky, she's very intelligent and she's very sexually pure, but she's a little mermaid and she's never seen the world before. If you replaced the word dolphin with mermaid, this book would be indistinguishable from the YA red-covered shit smutty romance that you find in like a dollar store, right? It would be indistinguishable from that. It would be on those shelves and not the fucking Women's Prize shortlist. I don't know what's been changed by making them dolphins when the author refuses to really delve into the world or explain why a dolphin's world is different to ours. Right? This book has a few key issues that make it seem lazy and, again, self-important. And it doesn't do enough to distinguish itself from just smutty romance. It follows those tropes. And yeah, when I heard about the book, I was shocked when I read it that it conformed as much to the meme version of it that my expectations had put in my head. Okay, so when you're anthropomorphizing with books, you're either trying to make it an allegory like Animal Farm, where you're using the animals to represent other things quite specifically. Animal Farm's the best premise. There are other examples. I guess Glory that came out last year is another example of that. Or you're using animals in a way to make something seem more elemental because you're putting it from a different perspective. So if you want to describe like the feeling of nature or some shit like that, and you put it from the perspective of an animal, you get that inherent sort of unknowability of it because it's a totally different species. That kind of adds an elemental power to it. Or you're using it to tell like a kind of adventure story, like, and I compare that to Watership Down, which is one of the best books ever written, and you compare it to that, and that book has like that book is using it to tell kind of like a classic British adventure story, but it's using animals to do that. And all three of those types of books have specific traits and qualities that make them stand out from each other, and this book just does none of them and just sits in the middle like a big fucking chunk of just YA romance smegma. Pod goes out of its way to treat the dolphins like humans and make their systems like human systems. And when it follows the trends of YA romance or any kind of like self-important ecological novel, it's hard for me to take it seriously when it does that. Their inner lives are just what humans do but stranger, I guess. It doesn't really delve into the concepts that it sets up. It sets up like kingships and pods, and the idea of like idle gossip is in there at one point, but it isn't distinguished from the way humans conduct themselves. It's just with the added physiology of a dolphin. There's not enough to make it different. It just seems like a woman wrote this, a human wrote this, which is not necessarily what I want. There's a pod kingdom in it, but you never get a good sense of the pod size or the characters in the pod. There's like 5 fucking characters in the book, so you never get a sense that it's like a kingdom. You don't know how many people are in this pod. You don't know like really how it runs. And that's the main point. I'll get into one of my main points surrounding that thesis that I gave, which is that this book really poorly treats its mythology. It really has no grasp of its mythology. It has no, it like doesn't try to. It doesn't try to do that. So immediately, there's a couple of those trends that I said, like using animals to be like fantasy. Using animals in a fantasy sense where they have a mythology and they're like humans but they're animals, or using it as an allegory or shit like that. This book is trying to be both the allegory elemental side, but also trying to be the kind of adventurous, like, here's what it's like being a dolphin. And because it tries to do both, it doesn't pay enough attention to either concept and how they both work. So it just comes across feeling lazy. It feels lazy. The whole thing feels lazy. The book is incapable of getting human institutions out of its head. It has, like, concepts of, like, older languages, like Old Pelagic, and it gives names to the tribes like the Longi tribe and shit like that. But these are just words. These are not established. The mythology is so fucking bad. They're just terms that she added in to make it seem like there was a mythology, but there isn't. She's just come up with a word. These dolphins could be people, or as I said, mermaids, and this book would not change much at all. You could take it out and put it on land, and with the way it treats its mythology, it could just be like in a pretend society of humans. It does not do enough in its mythology to make it seem like dolphins created it, or that dolphins inhabit it. They just have terms that humans use, and they just operate like humans do. The mythology of this book is so half-baked. And again, like I said, these dolphins could be mermaids or even humans, and this book would not change much at all. If you remove the ocean, you would only remove a few self-important passages about how cool the ocean is, and then the book would not change that much. From here, I'm gonna pound you with examples of why the mythology's shit. I'm just gonna hit you with them, and you're gonna have to deal with it, alright? I have maybe 10 examples of that, just to really hammer home why it's so bad. It was another moment of the Exodus ritual, the part when one of the tribe must swim out alone, in tribute to that Longi hero who willingly gave himself to the white goddess to spare the rest. So shit, just dumbass terms. So there's a great white shark, but they call it a white goddess instead. So fucking lazy. What is that, what, and they call other animals by their actual name. They know that one animal is a wrasse, and they call the fugu fish a fugu fish. So why do they call a great white shark a white goddess? What the fuck? Why is their mythology so dumb? Why is it so dumb? And so, like, cherry-picked? The issues with dolphins being described similarly to humans is exacerbated by, again, how lazy the writing and some of the word choices are, and also how half-baked the mythology is. When you look at something like Watership Down, which again, like I said, is one of the best books ever written, when you look at Watership Down, the mythology of that book is so well established, and it informs every part of their lives. Every part of the rabbits' lives is informed by El Herrera and death, and the sort of models that they have their societies over is adhered to. And the book pays great attention to describing the mythology, and it goes through popular myths of the world. And because of the tone it's going for, and because it's like a classic sort of fantasy book that's kind of like a children's adventure novel, it's at liberty to do that because it's describing a different world. And it really adds to the book. It makes it feel like a different world. It feels really rich and deep. And this book does not do that. It just pretends to have a mythology by saying some dumb names, but you can tell its focus is on its self-important ecological aren't men bad message, and it sacrifices the stuff that I would need to get into the weird-ass concept that you have. And because you don't have that stuff to flesh out the weird-ass concept, I can't look at that and these themes that you're now trying to put out with any other perspective than, oh, these are just dolphins that are doing this. This is just a dolphin that just clicks and flaps its flippers and shit like that. It didn't do enough to distinguish itself and make me care about the points it was trying to make. They have a couple of stupid words, but none of them feel integrated into the universe. There's like a first alliance. What the fuck is the first alliance? Like, so bad, so fucking bad, it's just words. Or like the megapod that they've created, but you don't get how big the megapod is, because again, there's only like 5 characters in it. It's so bad, the sense of scope, the sense of location, the sense of character, the sense of mythology, it's all so off. Here are a bunch of examples of the book's mythology that I have cherry-picked for you. It may sound nitpicky, but I do not care. At one point, Ia calls a coral reef a coral plaza. So does Ia know what a plaza is? How do they know what a plaza is? What is a plaza to these people, right? That is a lazy word choice, because you have forgotten that you're viewing it through a different species. Even if your job as a narrator was to detach and talk normally about these dolphins, like, a lot of it is to do with the narrator voice as well. Some of that's really sort of off. But if your point was to detach and talk to dolphins like if you're talking to them either from the David Attenborough, the dolphin is now going to do this, or if you're trying to get into their head of like, I'm gonna go do this now, isn't the ocean so fun? If you're switching between the two, that's fine, and the book kind of does, but even if you are, using the word plaza is just unacceptable. It's totally out of place in that fucking context. It's out of place, and it just seems so weird and so dumb. It's like someone doing a historical book, like one of these historical retellings from the Women's Prize shortlist, and then one of the characters just whips out an iPhone. It's crazy how much bullshit the author will throw up at you to cover its premise and cover the cracks in its premise. It will deliberately, like, flesh out fish that have no point to the story, or flesh out, like, concepts that don't matter, just to cover its tracks. And it's so annoying. Like, it's a stupid concept from the outset, so why'd you write it? If you have to do so much legwork to try and make the fucking concept work, why did you bother doing that? These 4 youths had raped a co-wife of the First Alliance, defiling the sacrosanct male hierarchy they hoped to join. What is that piece of mythology? What is it? Expound on it. Explain it so then it could be interesting. Don't just like say it like, oh, there's a First Alliance. So shut the fuck up! Like, it just makes it seem so half-baked and lazy that you've just said there's a First Alliance and there's a megapod and there's also a hierarchy, but I'm not going to explain any of the details of the hierarchy. I'm just going to say it's there. It's basically like a patriarchy, guys, but I'm not going to explain even if it's like a patriarchy. It's just that there are some men in charge, and there's a king, and there's also an advisor, but there's no one else in this megapod. There's just 2 people that run it. Shut the fuck up. All of it is so lazy, and the second you start putting a needle into it, it just fucking cracks. It's a nonsense phrase or word here to cover the gaps of why dolphins act the way they do, or why the author can't quite get into their inner lives. They'll just throw up some dumbass word like old pelagic, like they all speak the same language, or like, the Terciops tribe, and she'll just throw up stupid words that don't matter in an attempt to cover her tracks and make the book seem like it's more cohesive than it is. And anybody can do that. I feel like I could write this book to the same level of quality that it's at. And I also think that just the average person who doesn't read could do that. If you gave them that prompt, they would develop the mythology in the same way that this author does. It is the laziest, most, like, self-aggrandizing piece of shit I've ever read. He spoke teleost instead of the elegant reef dialect that was his native speech. Go away. What are these languages? Huh? What's teleost? What is that? Who speaks that? Tell me more about it. Is it a dead language? That sounds interesting. Oh, it's just some dumbass word that you've thrown in? Like, why does it do that? Why does it every now and again just have a sudden burst of like, here's a weird term, and then it goes back to being like, I'm a dolphin and being a dolphin's really fun. Wee, I'm going around, oh my god, I get to eat a squid tonight. Wee, oh no, some male's trying to fuck me. Oh. And then it'll cut to like, the old pelagic language is being used by the Terciops tribe. And it's just like words, it's just words! The wrasse swam up to the horde of people, but he could no more stop the great compacted mass of them being dragged up to the surface than he could stop the moon shining. So the word people there is used to describe dolphins. You're literally calling dolphins people! Did you forget? Did you forget that you had that premise? Here's a great example. This is actually a really good example, but I'll have to explain why it's good. Like all super males of his species, the great Napoleon wrasse had once been female. It was a miraculous natural phenomenon and sacred mystery that came to certain females if the dominant male of the herd was lost. So like that kind of gender change that certain asexual fish can do. Several would then undergo the change, but as they emerged as resplendent claimants to the title of Lord Male, they had to undergo highly ritualized combat with each other. So she said the change, and she's called it highly ritualized combat. She has not described any facet of the highly ritualized concept, but because she's lazy and she's panicking and she doesn't know how to write a book, she's just called it highly ritualized combat. I'd love to see some of the highly ritualized combat, or see it described. And because this book often talks about nothing and talks about bullshit, it would not be out of place for it to do that. But it doesn't, because it just uses that word as an excuse to cover its tracks. Also, calling it the change is another thing. If this is a society that has been around for hundreds of years and developed itself, would they just call it the change? Would they not have another term for it? Why would they just call it the change? Develop and have fun with your premise. If there's highly ritualized combat, describe the highly ritualized combat so I can be sure that you haven't just shat this book out. A quote from the leader of the main harem spoken about a longy dolphin. This harem will obey the rules. The longy witch is trying to take over your minds. Do not let her. And here's another fantastic opportunity to demonstrate how actually hard anthropomorphic writing is. Why is the word witch there? The word harem is okay because that's one of the main concepts of the book, and it's a concept that dolphins have been shown to exhibit. That's fine, and it also fits into the concept of the book where it's like talking about patriarchy or some bullshit. I'll get to that later. But using the word harem there is fine. I'm okay with that. Like, that's just a human term for describing something that dolphins are doing. I would prefer it if they didn't use that term and they had dolphin ways of describing it, but fine, I can let that one slide. But calling something a witch is lazy writing, and it's from dialogue. It's not from the narrator this time, it's from dialogue. One of the dolphins says this, which means the dolphins have a concept of what a witch is, but a witch is never described outside of dialogue from these characters. So what is a witch to them? Here are the two possibilities. Either there's a witch that brews potions like Ursula in a secret cave, and it like rubs the bottle with its flippers like, ee-ya, and it's making a fucking like Minecraft potion like, ee-ya. Or the author is lazy, and they have used a human word to describe something that could have been used with other terms. Why do they know what a witch is? What is a witch to them? Magic is not a set concept, and witchcraft is not a set concept in this universe. She thought of what sounded like an educated, broadly reasonable, rational insult from this leader to other people. That she's trying to make them talk proper and kind of like, detached, like, you will not do this, says the king, you know, like the king is talking very formally. But using the word witch there doesn't work, because what the fuck does a dolphin think a witch is? You can have squires and kings and shit if the society you're talking about more or less has those elements in them. If it's integral to the book, I'm allowed to see that, but my suspension of disbelief fucking stops there. When you start using lazy words like witch, or fucking highly ritualized combat, and you don't describe the combat, all it makes it seem like is lazy, unedited, lazy writing. This is why you draft. You could remove the word witch and replace it with a word that's more in line with the Ocean Kingdom. You could replace it with a slimy word like eel. This longy eel is trying to take over your minds, do not let her. That almost works better, saying eel, because you're implying that she's sort of sly and she's like trying to take over the harem. But you use the word witch, and the witch gets used 5 times as an insult, and it doesn't get used anywhere in the book in any explanatory concept at all. I will not accept any counter-argument to this point that I've just made. You cannot give a reasonable, rational response as to why a dolphin would use the word witch there. And that is what makes this book so similar to any Wattpad piece of shit. And I give those Wattpad piece of shit authors credit because they're just trying to write something nice. They're just trying to like write something that they enjoy, that they want to write. There's real passion there. But obviously a Wattpad author or an AO3 author is not going to try and interrogate their premise the same way. They're just going to be like, oh, it's a witch, you know, like I don't expect that of them. I do expect it from a Women's Prize shortlisted book. The author had this concept and she wrote it down in 1 or 2 sentences and she was like, wow, this is so fucking unique. It's the same thing with her other book, The Bees, that was on the shortlist. The whole premise of that book is like, what if I told a story from inside a beehive? No one's done that before.
Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah!
She doesn't take the time to interrogate her premise or the minutiae of it, and I fucking hate this shit. It's so annoying that she's just had this like dumb, conceited concept that she thinks is unique only because no one else has done it. If a rabbit in Watership Down says a word like witch, witches are an established part of that universe. Every single term that the rabbits use in Watership Down is explained and expounded upon. And Watership Down is very full of life and characterful and fun, and it's very like emotive, so that when the ending comes, it's actually sad. This book is cold and clinical and very detached because of its self-importance. And it doesn't feel like it needs to expand its mythology because it feels like it has these higher goals of like, I'm gonna tell this really important book about rape and sexual assault, except it's about dolphins, so it's utterly unrelatable to humans. Because it is unrelatable to humans. Because dolphins do not act like humans. Let's talk about the self-seriousness in more detail now. This might be the most conceited and pretentious book I've ever read, to the point where it is very funny. This is a very funny book, but never in the way that it intends to be. When I say pretentious, I mean specifically implying meaning that isn't there, or that an audience cannot receive, particularly that second part. The amount of passages about like, isn't the sea mysterious? Aren't these characters so unknowable? Aren't these concepts so deep? Got so fucking annoying. Anytime someone talked, it described the talking or the way they gave song, particularly singing, in such an insistent, over-the-top way that it got really old and really insufferable really, really quick. So anytime a character would sing a song, the author would say like, the song burst forth in billows. Oh, the song just touched the very bottom of her soul. It touched all the blood within her. The song was so powerful and moving. And it's like, shut the fuck up! The book would also cut randomly to other characters like the wrasse or the whale, but the way they describe their worlds is exactly similar to the way that Ia describes it. So what the fuck is the point of doing that? They're not individuals. They're just vessels for the author to describe how cool the ocean is. Fuck, I could watch Frozen Planet 2 and I would learn how cool the ocean is. This premise is literally a single sentence. This is about dolphins, but it's actually deep. And I think this is hack literature. I am not falling for it. Now we get into the really fun part. The self-seriousness is incredibly bold because this book involves rape. Having the balls to frame rape through dolphins, it earns my endless respect because that is so fucking bold, but also so dumb. Let me explain this, and I kind of have to read it because my point's very specific, so if you'll allow me to just read from my laptop. There's rape in this book, and it's described in the way that humans describe it, and how awful it is. It's described in human terms, right? And I think that that is an intellectually insulting and kind of bad or like unwise thing to do. When you call something rape and you describe something as rape, you immediately put something onto it from a human perspective that diminishes the role of the other characters in that. And it also diminishes the point of using animals in general. Animals do not process rape in the same way that humans do. Or if they do, they would describe it in different terms. The fact that they're animals does not matter at all, and the reason I say it's unwise is because if you replaced dolphins with humans, and you made it some high fantasy concept that was dealing with rape, it would be a better book because it would be using humans. But because it's using dolphins, every time there was a rape scene, I was just thinking about a video like this. And I mean that as a joke, of course, but I also mean that in like a genuinely worried way. When you're describing rape in these terms, you're kind of diminishing the impact of it. So in showing the laziness of the author, I tried to compare it to Wattpad and sort of hunky alpha male romance fiction. And even when the book is trying to be meaningful and say stuff about the patriarchy or shit like that, it still can't resist doing the Wattpad stuff. And that comes in at the end, and it's really funny. There's this drugged up sort of alpha male dolphin, and again there's the cute sort of independent woman dolphin, and they meet and it's love at first sight, and then he stands up to the alpha male colony and goes, "You shall not harm her anymore." And it's so fucking Wattpad. Like, are we serious? Are we actually serious? Are we for real about this? This drugged up dolphin is called Google. I'm gonna read the sentence where they first meet. The ocean and moon drew breath. Ia and Google found each other. That, no joke, might be the stupidest sentence I've ever fucking read. The pod clamoured to hunt, but Ia's hunger was to see him again. The stranger who was anything but, and who knew her without words. His burned and fearsome body was beautiful to her, and when they shared their— I can't keep reading. And when they shared their energy, it felt like flying. I fucking can't deal with it. Ia wanted it. Ia wanted him, body and soul. Silently she called to him, willing that he had not left the waters. Shut, bro, listen, shut the fuck up. The ending turns into a clusterfuck too. The way the book ends, spoilers for Pod, the way the book ends is that a bunch of humans come in, and humans are barely set up in this book beforehand, right? It pretends it has an ecological theme, but there's barely any humans in the book. Humans come in, and then they kill all the evil male dolphins, like the new evil leader of the male hierarchy just gets fucking speared, and then this Google character gets dragged onto a propeller and, like, gets fucking killed, and I was just cackling like, yes, kill them all, melt them all down for fucking glue, fuck these characters, fuck these dolphins, I could not give a shit. Every character sucked, their personalities were boring, they all talked the same, kill everything, kill the whale, kill the wrasse, kill every male dolphin, kill ear, and fuck off. By the end, I wanted nothing more than some just juicy, tasty dolphin tail soup, especially ear. I wanted ear's tail fin, ear, I wanted her tail fin in my fucking soup. There's nothing I hate more in books than self-importance. Nothing. And that is this book's fatal fucking flaw. If it was less self-important, I would be giving it a higher rating. I really would. Because the book is also a boldly stupid book that I give as much respect to as I must take away. It wasn't particularly well written, the characters suck, the author refuses to treat its premise seriously or take full advantage of it. Yeah, I pan this shit. It's a 3. Fuck it. So thanks guys for watching this video about Pod and the story of ear and Google. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was a shit book. It was spouting nonsense. It was a whole lot of bullshit. Dolphinitely check this one out. I'm just gonna put all these puns in the description too. If this book wins the Women's Prize, I might try and cross a 6-lane highway.